Good afternoon. This is RCB News, and I am Ryan Bowling. I wanted to get right down to the matter at hand here. This has been something that's been heavy on my heart that I just wanted to read out of a book that I had purchased several years ago. It's entitled Grave Influence by Brannon, Howse, and it's 21 Radicals and Their Worldview that rule America from the grave. And in one particular chapter, he talks about Karl Marx. Now, most of us are familiar with Karl Marx, so I'm not going to even go into any discussion about Karl Marx. We all know that he was a founder of communism, and he wrote or co-wrote a list of writings known as the Communist Manifestos in 1848. They're kind of like the blueprint of the layout of how communism should be operated in a particular country. But in this particular book, in the chapter on Karl Marx, there was a man by the name of, Cleon Skousen, I believe that was his name. And he wrote a book in 1961, best-selling book in 1961, entitled The Naked Communist. Some of you may have heard of this, in which he lists 45 goals of the Communist Party. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is in 1961. 1961, and when I read some of these goals, I'm not going to read all of them, it's 45 of them, but I'm not going to read all of them. I'm going to read a few of these goals, and I want you to think to your own self and say, man, have some of these goals actually come to pass? Have they met some of these goals? Have they accomplished some of these goals? Well, I'm going to submit to you that yes, they have. Yes, they have. And so he says, having served 16 years at the FBI, Skousen was a serious student of his communist enemies. The January 10th, 1963 congressional record lists these 45 goals. As I said earlier, I'm not going to read all 45 goals, but I want to read a few of these goals, and I want you to say to your own self, man, what have we been missing here? Sounds strangely familiar with what we're dealing with today in modern day America. Goal number 17 says this: get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teacher associations. Put the party line in textbooks. This is interesting. He says, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Don't we see that today in our modern society? Last video I talked about the phenomena of critical race theory and how critical race theory is designed to deconstruct modern concept of education and modern concepts of race in order to redefine it in a way that is designed to cause division among ethnic groups, particularly whites and blacks. But you can watch my last video and see the details on that. Hear the details on that. But it's clear that communist insurgents have gained control of our schools. Goal 20 says infiltrate the press. Get control of book reviews, assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making decisions. Clear that they have infiltrated the press. If you look at the news, many of our mainstream news outlets have socialist/communist leanings. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, if they're not socialists, if they're not communists, they certainly push that ideology. They may not say I'm a communist, I'm a socialist, but they certainly push that ideology. So this seems to indicate and suggest without a shadow of a doubt that communists have infiltrated our press. Number 21, gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. In other words, gain control of the entertainment industry. I don't need to describe to you what that is. You look at a lot of the movies today, a lot of the mainstream movies today, the characters and the plots always tend to have a favorable position towards socialism. I'm going to use socialism here because socialism is a softer term, even though here it's talking about 45 goals of communism. I'm going to use socialism because that's a softer term. As a matter of fact, I believe it was Lenin in a biography he wrote, in his autobiography he wrote many, many years ago, stated that socialism is basically the setup stage for communism. It's a softer form of communism. Once socialism is placed into a country, as time goes on as time is progresses onward, it eventually leads to what? Communism. So I'm going to use the term socialism because it's a softer, more acceptable term rather than communism, but also although communism is the ultimate goal. But it says gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Look at a lot of these films. Look at the plots. Look at the characters. Many of them seem to have socialist leanings. It's always about the government fixing everything. The government fixing this. The government fixing that. The government has all the answers. That's socialism. Goal 25 says break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. Here's the thing that's crazy about this. How clear this is. Pornography was not a major thing in 1961. It was going on clearly, but it wasn't a mainstream situation. It wasn't anything mainstream. But here in Goal 25, he says one of the goals of the communist insurgents was to break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, and radio and TV. TV was relatively new. And yet the communist insurgents' goal was to completely reshape morality. Now, one has to ask the question before I go any further. Why would the communist insurgents, or the socialist rather insurgents, whichever one you want to use, why would they want to break down cultural standards of morality? Why is that important? It's important to break down moral standards in a society because it's easier to control and manipulate people's minds and brainwash them with communist ideology. In order to get people to accept communism or socialism and embrace it wholly, they got to weaken people's defenses. When a person is filled with sensual desires and they're controlled by sensual desires, it's harder to think. You're just going by what you feel. You're going by the carnal pleasures of your flesh. And you're not thinking, you're merely feeling. So therefore, when you break down the moral standards, it's easy to brainwash or condition people to accept a certain ideology. In this instance, that ideology is socialism / communism. So you got to break down the moral standards. Now, I don't need to go into detail about that. We already know that the standards in America have been broken down. So it seems evident that the communists have infiltrated our country. This is not a conspiracy theory. Goal 26. Now, this is the one that's going to really get you. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. Let me say that again. 26 is present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as, quote, normal, natural, and healthy. How often do we see that? How often do we see homosexuality and degeneracy and promiscuity presented as normal and healthy in commercials? You see it in commercials, flashes of it in commercials. You see it in the movies. You see it in the sitcoms. You see it in the TV shows. You hear it in the songs. It's everywhere, but it's done in such a way as if it's just normal. The purpose is to get you to accept it as normal. Once you accept it as normal, then you accept communism as a normal way of control, of running the country. As a normal way of running the world. We have to get, in other words, we have to get control of the country. We have to get control of everything because this is the only way that we're going to prosper. This is the only way that this country or this world is going to be successful. But in order to do that, they have to break people's defenses down. They have to break their sexuality down. They have to confuse them. They have to present things that are not normal as normal on a consistent basis. It's mind control. Now listen what 27 says. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with, quote, social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. In other words, think about a lot of these churches. A lot of these churches are not concerned with preaching and teaching the gospel and preaching and teaching the Bible. And there's nothing wrong with having, social programs, outreach programs. I have it at my own church where we feed the poor and help people out. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not the problem. The problem is when that particular church's only focus is on what they call their social religion. Social religion has to do with with economics and getting a job and so forth. And all those things are good. But if that particular church is not preaching and teaching Jesus Christ and preaching and teaching spiritual things, then it have lost focus. And according to Goal 27, one of the goals of the communists slash socialists or socialist slash communists is to infiltrate these churches and replace revealed religion with social religion, break down the spirituality of the people, discredit the Bible, and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. If you look at a lot of these churches and so forth, a lot of them don't really believe the Bible. It's just a book to them. They preach it, they teach it, but they don't really embrace it. And when you look through it, look at a lot of the movies. But look at a lot of the movies. What are a lot of the movies? When they present Christianity, how is it presented? In a negative light. The purpose is to discredit it. I'm going to read 28, and I'm going to do a couple of more. 28 says, eliminate prayer on any phase of religious expression in the schools on the grounds that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. And I'm going to read two more, actually. I'm going to go to 40. Goal 40 says, discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Look at this. Don't we see that today? And then goal 41, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blanks, and retarding of children to suppress influence of parents. Let me read that again. I want you to get this. It says, emphasize the need to raise children away from the, quote, negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blanks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. In other words, all the negative things that children experience, put that on the parents. All the negative things they learn, put that on the parents. Okay? And this is really shocking, because it talks about emphasizing the need to raise children away from negative influence of parents. Haven't you noticed something in a lot of these schools? A lot of these schools are teaching things such as critical race theory and other ungodly, immoral ideologies that have nothing to do with what they're supposed to be teaching, and they're not telling the parents. Now, I could read further into this, but it seems evident when you look at our schools today and when you look at what's being taught in the schools today, but there is an emphasis to raise children away from so-called, quote-unquote, negative influence of parents, when it's the parents' responsibility to teach and raise and teach the kids from the beginning. So I wanted to bring that out, because when you look throughout our society and you look at all the things that are happening in America, it is clear that communists have infiltrated this country and have ruined a lot of our institutions. But our responsibility, those of us that are in the know, we have a responsibility to expose what they're doing. Will we stop them? Maybe, maybe not. But it don't mean that if we see, if it continues to go forward on and on and on and on, doesn't mean that we shouldn't say anything about it. We have a responsibility, those of us that know. So I just wanted to mention that. I just wanted to bring that out. We have to continue to expose what's going on here. Just recently, I was watching a video, and there was, I believe it was a transgender, it was Anthony Brown Logan's video, and there's some kind of transgender male who won an MMA battle or whatever. I didn't look at the entire video. I didn't get a chance to really look into it, because I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just crazy. It's just getting crazy and crazy and crazy. But some of the goals that I read to you makes it clear that this has been going on for decades in our country. And in part, many of the people in America are responsible for this, because we kind of just, people in the past kind of just pushed this and brushed it aside. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. That hasn't happened. No such thing. But now look at where we are today in America. Those of us that know have a responsibility to expose the hidden works of darkness. But if you all guys like this video, press the like button, make your comments known, share this video, and subscribe. Thank you, and see you again on RCB News. God bless.